These kind of things are really important so that you don't come off as too modern when interpreting works that are more historical. So you're always a researcher as a singer, in my opinion.
Alexis Rodda was a US Fulbright student during the 2019-20 program year with the research project focused on Egon Lustgarten, an exiled Austrian composer who moved to New York in 1938. Alexis recently returned to Europe to tour music from Egon Lustgarten and other exiled artists, and we sat down with her to discuss her Fulbright experience and life after Fulbright.
So I did my Fulbright project at the Exilarte in Vienna. I worked on the music of Egon Lustgarten, who was a composer born in 1887 in Vienna. He emigrated to the United States in 1938. And since then, his music has been really unknown. He did return to Austria and Switzerland at one time to try to revive his career. But though he enjoyed a lot of recognition in Vienna in the 1920s and 1930s and had a wonderful reputation among a really thriving musical scene in Vienna at that time, after he emigrated to the United States, his music became virtually unknown. And so it's part of my project was excavating this work for performance so that broader audiences would get to know his work and get to know his life. My advisors at the Exilarte were Professor Gerald Gruber and Professor Michael Haas. And how I became connected with them was I was a big fan of Professor Michael Haas's book, Forbidden Music, and had read it many years earlier, and it really informed a lot of my doctoral research. And when I was looking for an advisor for my Fulbright, since I knew I wanted to do a Fulbright, I wrote to him thinking, like, he's a huge scholar, there's no way he's going to write back. And then he wrote back within 5 minutes and said, yes, we'd love for you to come to your Fulbright here. So it was a wonderful experience for me. So around 2012, I want to say, I went to Munich to be a young artist with this organization called Elysium Between Two Continents. And so this organization, Elysium Between Two Continents, has been doing work in which they highlight exiled composers, or not just exiled composers, but also exiled artists, writers, philosophers. So because of that performance connection, I started following their work. I'd go to their concerts in New York City because they straddle the line between Berlin and New York. And they were always talking about this composer, Egon Lustgarten. I wish someone would pick this work up. I wish someone would look into this composer because he's a really interesting person and has beautiful music. And the music that they would play at these concerts, I did agree, was very beautiful. And so I asked them, would you be willing to let me look at the archive, which at the time they had in their archives, and they've since donated it to the Exilarte. So that's how I started getting interested in the idea of exiled artists and Egon Lustgarten specifically. It was really through working with them and then also doing subsequent concerts with them. And now we have a very wonderful, vibrant working relationship. I think research informs performance choices no matter what. As a singer, if you are doing your homework as a singer, you will research the time period from which a piece came, whether it's an opera or a song. You'll research the character. You'll research maybe certain etiquette that was appropriate at the time. Because, for example, why is it such a big deal that she looked at him across the room? Like, maybe there was a reason why you weren't supposed to make eye contact with a man that, in the 13th century. These kind of things are really important so that you don't come off as too modern when interpreting works that are more historical. So you're always a researcher as a singer, in my opinion. Of course, in this way, it's a bit different because it's researching music and someone's life. But the research really informs how I sing, because to me it's so profound. Because I try not to bring into the biographical facts into the performance, because I don't think it's a direct parallel. You can't say, oh, I'm singing a sad song from 1945, therefore it's because he was sad. A lot of times composers were just setting poetry that they liked or inspired them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was autobiographical. So I try not to fall into that trap. But I do use the biographical information to inform the importance of my work, that it's important that I translate every word faithfully, that I sing with a lot of emotion and passion, that I interpret the music to the best of my ability, even if there's something musically that doesn't feel quite right or it's not sitting well with me in terms of like, oh, I'm not sure how to interpret this. I really, at the end of the day, I want to do the best that I can to give a faithful rendition of this work, because I think it's important to give the credit and due that's owed to this composer, because they didn't get it in their lifetime. So a couple years ago, Elysium Between Two Continents and I decided to think about a project to mark the 100th anniversary of the Society for Contemporary Music. This was a really important event because it was a pushback against the Salzburg Festival, a kind of a more conservative display of Austrian imperialism. And it featured a lot of composers who ended up being exiled because of their overly modern music, or because of their Jewish identity, or a combination of the two, or something to do with their political identity. And we thought we really want to mark this occasion because there's this really interesting picture that comes out of that society. It's a news coverage of that society event, where 8 out of 14 of the composers were forced into exile during World War II. So we decided we would feature the music of these 8 composers after emigration. And we didn't really give a commentary about whether the music was better after emigration or worse after emigration. We just say, here's just the music after they emigrated. Take it as it is. Did it change? Did it not change? We're not giving any sort of commentary on that. We collaborated with the American Society for Jewish Music, for the Leo Beck Institute of New York, and it turned into this really amazing big festival in New York City that was 3 days long and featured many different chamber works, vocal ensemble works, piano works, and it was so incredibly well received. The audiences were blown away that all this music exists that nobody hears anymore, because a lot of these composers, while yes, their name may occasionally pop up here and there, it's pretty much only in textbooks, or sometimes if you're doing a concert about exiled music, their name will pop up. But the music is so beautiful and really speaks for itself when you hear it in person. And then we decided that we wanted to bring some of the music to Germany, not all of it. It would be a bit too large to bring the level of the concerts that we did to Germany. So we did a pared down version with the Diplomatic String Quartet and a pianist and myself as the singer. And it was a 3-city tour in Berlin, in Munich, and in Frankfurt. And art that who a refugee, O Mary, mother of Christ. That's always such a scary question for a singer, because it's either you're so busy that you don't even know what you're going to do with yourself, or you're in that period of like, oh man, I have to start going on auditions and pick up some new work. I do have some exciting things. One of them I can't 100% probably announce yet, but there is probably going to be a big Egon Lustgarten project on the horizon in 2026. More biographical than musical, but it will keep you posted. And I just found out this past week that Brooklyn College, again, it hasn't been quite announced yet, but I don't think they'll mind me sharing this. Their undergraduate and graduate division is going to produce Egon Lustgarten's opera, The Blue Mountain, the one that I found and digitized and kind of excavated. So they are, for their spring 2025 opera, are going to perform Egon Lustgarten's The Blue Mountain. And I'll obviously consult on that and help them along the journey. For applicants, I would say make sure to choose a project that you're very passionate about, but that also has some room to grow. I know that for me, for example, I didn't want to do research on, say, Mozart, because so many people have come before me who have said a lot about Mozart. I wanted to choose a project that had some element of discovery, and I often recommend that to people who are looking into what project should I do. If it's been talked about by scholars who have a 25-year tenure on you, I don't know. I think it's probably better to pick a topic that is a little more unexplored. That's just my opinion. Maybe not everyone would agree with me. But make sure it's a topic you really are passionate about, because I think that will come through on your application. Secondly, for current participants, I think just don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. I feel like my first couple months, I just was so uncomfortable the entire time because I didn't speak German all that well. I was still learning cultural norms. I felt like it was just so obvious I was an American, though maybe it wasn't. But it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, that's the point. You're growing. And I remember by spring, which is unfortunate because the COVID pandemic broke out, but I really started to feel like more in my element. It's like being a college freshman all over again. There just happens to be a language barrier, and it's okay. It's going to be an amazing learning experience, and just really lean into that discomfort and don't let it prevent you from going out and experiencing the country the way that you could be. I know, like, for example, it would have been easier to just kind of stay home, but I forced myself to really get out there. Like, I'd go to like meetup groups, or I went to the theater quite a lot, even though I didn't like fully understand the language, but I thought, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity, so I'm just going to really take advantage of it.